Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to be reviewing The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. Now if I had to sum both up, The Legend of Ruby Sunday would be absolutely brilliant, whilst The Empire of Death is less than brilliant. But without no further ado, let's get into the video and break it down. Beginning with The Legend of Ruby Sunday, I really did like the opening scene, how the TARDIS slid into unit, and how the Doctor greeted everyone as well, particularly Colonel Ibrahim, because I didn't warm to him in the 60th anniversary, but here in this two-parter, I did enjoy his character a lot more, so I really did like this introduction to the episode. It was good how they put more effort into Susan Triad's appearances, for example her being on Planet Varsate and all the other appearances that we haven't seen before in the previous episodes of the series, so I do like that addition. It wasn't only that I enjoyed as well, but I really enjoyed the addition of anagrams, like how Torchwood is an anagram of Doc 2, and how Susan Triad was of course an anagram of Sutekh, and all that sort of other thing, and Susan his granddaughter. So I did like those additions, and it wasn't only that I really enjoyed. Susan, like I just mentioned, I really enjoyed how they used Susan as in his actual granddaughter, and then that was the end of the cold opening to the episode. I thought it was a great setup to the edge of your seat moments that this episode provides, because from therein, for the whole episode, I really was hooked onto it. So I really feel like this was a great cold opening to open the episode. One thing that I've got to ask you guys about is something I didn't understand was when they were talking about evil geniuses with Kate and Morris, and then she said she's got all of them except the obvious, and Morris said, we'll get him. Who was she talking about? Because I just don't understand who that was. I don't think they were talking about the Doctor, so I'm not sure. But what do you guys think? Do you think there's an answer to that? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of Morris, I've got to say, while his character was decent, I felt like his probability of a trap was funny at first, and then it started to grate a bit. So as a whole on his character, I'd say he's decent, but he's nothing special for me personally, so I wouldn't mind if he didn't reappear. I wouldn't mind if he appeared again, but I wouldn't mind if he didn't reappear either. Despite this being a horror type edge of your seat episode, there were some funny and sweet moments in it. For example, when Kate Stewart mentioned Susan Triad being on CBBC, Ruby's face was quite funny, and when Ruby's pictures appeared in the unit base, that was such a sweet scene as well, because everyone's reaction as well, so that was lovely. So I did like those sort of additions into the episode. And also something interesting that you sort of can pick up on is when Ruby said about don't go changing your face, and the Doctor said, oh, I won't be changing this face anytime soon. Is that a hint towards the audience that we got shooty for the long run? Hopefully so. And also they did mention how the Christmas incident was labelled under Goblin, which I really liked as well. It's also here in this episode we learn that Donna did actually take up that job with UNIT, which is quite funny. But where was she? Well, I suspect she's probably on one of her 5-week holidays. Before Mrs. Flood turned quite dark, that whole cup of tea scene with Cherry and Mrs. Flood was funny. And it's interesting how she knew Sutekh was coming. This is sort of more hints towards who she actually could be. Through RTD's first era, we always used to get at least one mention per series about the Doctor actually being a dad. Yet here we learn that he isn't actually has children. He's just sort of like got grandchildren but not children. And he's saying that's how Time Lords work. It doesn't always work in that order. But I don't know how that would work. I guess it's just going to be an enigma, just like his name. Despite this being an almost flawless episode, there was one scene that I didn't enjoy, and that was Kate not letting Carla in and then the Doctor sort of overriding Kate's power. I just feel like it made Kate look like really unreasonable and unlikable, so I wasn't keen on that scene about how she didn't actually let her in, because again it just makes Kate seem so unlikable, so I wasn't keen on that. I enjoyed the Doctor's reaction to the time window because that's generally something he would do, laugh at it for it being so sort of like lashed together as he said and all that sort of thing. So I do feel like that was such a Doctor-y thing, so I do really like that. And on a second watch, I was worried that the time window scene would sort of be a bit more boring because you know what's going to happen, you know you don't get answers. But actually it's still enjoyable on the second watch, which I'm really pleased about because again, you still have that mystery on the second watch before the Empire of Death. So it is still sort of fun. I will have to go back and watch it a third time just to see now we know of the Empire of Death, but I still, to me, feel like it's going to be an enjoyable watch. Another thing I wasn't keen on was with Mel, but mainly Kate again, about how hard they went on the Doctor because of Colonel Jacozzi. Now, it wasn't the Doctor's fault, and I just feel like they're going too hard on him because the Doctor always tries his best to keep everyone alive, but I felt they were sort of quite harsh on him in a way, the way they sort of looked at him and sort of said certain things to him. So I felt like they were a bit too harsh, and again, I didn't like that. And also, it just doesn't make sense at the end because everyone survives, including Colonel Jacozzi, so it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, we know that RTD likes to sort of mimic certain things in real life, and I think all of us could tell that when Susan Triad was dancing, that was undeniably Theresa May's dance, because straight away you could just sort of tell, and there's no way it wasn't. So I do like how he had sort of added that in, because that was quite funny. What I loved about this episode is it felt like we were pushed into believing so many things, not only with the anagrams, but the things that were said and the music that was played. For example, at first I really did think that it was the Beast who was coming back from Satan's pit, because we know Sutekh has actually wanted to face the Beast. Then you had Colonel Shakozy saying he was in hell, and then Ruby's foster mum saying it's the Beast. So I feel like at that stage I really thought it was actually Satan that was come back. Then I felt like we were pushed into believing it was the Master, because particularly when Ruby was running into the time window, you sort of had his theme playing. So I thought, oh, have they tricked us and the Master is actually coming back? Of course, we had the giggle where the tooth was picked up. So I thought, oh, have they tricked us into believing it's the Master? Then I thought it was the Trickster, and then when actually Harbinger mentioned the Trickster, I thought, oh, it can't be the Trickster. So I feel like we were pushed into believing these things, but I do like it because it sort of like makes us think that we know what's happening, and then it doesn't, so it adds to the surprise. So I really did like these sort of tricks that they played on us. The last 5 and 10 minutes of this scene are undeniably so scary and just such a highlight just of the series in general, not even the episode, of the series itself. I mean, it all started with sort of dreams and her not being able to sleep. Then you sort of had the mystery around the TARDIS in the way they made it look a bit scary. Then you had Harbinger. Then you had the sort of manifestation around the TARDIS. All of this, the last 5 or 10 minutes, is absolutely incredible. And it's one of the best cliffhangers, hand down, in the whole of Doctor Who, because I just felt like it was just done so brilliantly. And then when Susan Triad and Harriet were sort of possessed into the skeleton-like angels of Sutekh, I just thought they looked absolutely incredible, and they did so well, the prosthetics as well. All of it was just absolutely incredible, and it was just such a brilliant cliffhanger. Honestly, this was just absolutely brilliant. Now, I've rewatched it probably about 100 times because it's absolutely amazing, and I love it. No faults with this at all, and it was just best of the series and one of the best cliffhangers of Doctor Who. Now, originally I would have given it a huge 10 out of 10, and rewatching it you do notice some faults, but really, it was such a brilliant cliffhanger. It was edge of your seat moments, this episode, the entire thing, and all of it was done so well. I'm really glad they brought back Sutekh. I really loved Sutekh's angels and the way they made them look, and all of the mystery as well. It was just absolutely brilliant, so I'm going to keep it at 10 out of 10, because I can't remember the last time I was literally on the edge of my seat for the entire episode. So this absolutely deserves the 10 out of 10. Now, unfortunately, going from the next time trailer we sort of had of Empire of Death that played after the episode, it didn't look as great, and as I suspected, it didn't live up to the expectations. Now, the beginning of the episode started well. I really liked the brief sort of recap we had. It only lasted about 20 seconds, and what I liked about it is it just reminded us of the end of the episode, but didn't waste too much time because there was a lot to get through, so I'm really glad they didn't waste too much time with this sort of opening sort of recap. As I've touched upon, Sutekh having angels are a cool addition. Again, I like their prosthetics, but I also like the Sands of Death, and I liked how that sort of linked into his original theme and look, which I'll be delving into later. And I also liked how they were referred to as half-lives, and they would have been killed once Ruby's secret was found out. So again, these were nice additions to him. The episode continued to be great because you had Unit firing and then sort of being defeated with Kate dying, then even Ruby's foster mum dying, and then even Cherry and Mrs. Flood. And I really like Mrs. Flood dialogue, the way she said she'd storm down the gates of your maker. It was just so crazily good and evil. I just really builds the mystery around Mrs. Flood, which I am really looking forward to. One of the best things about the episode, which I didn't expect to actually happen, was when the memory TARDIS and when they were in the memory TARDIS, and it links back to the episode of the Tales of the TARDIS we had of Ruby and the Doctor, because in that actual Tales of the TARDIS episode, it wasn't sort of explained how Ruby and the Doctor got there and what happened afterwards and how they got off, but really you could see where it sort of slots in the actual episode. So I'm really glad they sort of made sense of it, and I'm really glad that the memory TARDIS has been included in actual Doctor Who, because then it sort of makes sense now of how this can actually happen. Some nitpicks I have is I'm pretty sure the Doctor referred to him as Sue in one part of the episode, which I really didn't like. And also another thing that I didn't like was how he referred to Sutekh as his greatest enemy ever. Now, I would say there's some room for debate for that, because really, yeah, he's really powerful, but considering how easily they sort of defeated Sutekh in this episode, I wouldn't say he was the most evil and strongest and best and most dangerous villain the Doctor's ever faced. So really, I would say it's up for debate. He's up there, but I wouldn't say he was the most. I enjoyed the callbacks they did in this episode because as a fan they're really lovely to see. For example, the actual flashback to Susan herself was really nice, but also I really like the sound effect of the memory TARDIS doors closing like the classic Doctor Who TARDIS doors. So I liked that addition, and it was so heartwarming to see Mel actually touch the Sixth Doctor's coat. So again, these were such nice things for fans to sort of pick up on. I did enjoy how 73 Yards played a fairly big scene and part of this episode itself, like when Ruby actually remembered what 73 Yards was, and Roger William reappearing. Now, it did lead me to believe that we were going to get more answers to 73 Yards, but I feel like it was just sort of left again. I just don't like how they sort of picked up on it and nothing really happened with it. It was only for the DNA testing, which in itself doesn't make sense. Because if Ruby's mum is normal and they can just find out through the DNA testing, then why couldn't the ambulance on Castarian 3 not actually know who Ruby's mum was and struggle with that? So for me, it just doesn't make sense. But again, I did sort of enjoy the sort of references to 73 Yards. And the Doctor actually working for Roger William makes me wonder, are we going to get more in the future? Because that sort of I feel like that's going to play a part in another episode, which I do hope so, because I feel like we need more on Roger William and 73 Yards itself. For the first time in this era, Skaro and the Daleks were mentioned, and it makes me wonder, does the Terry Nation contract actually exist? Because we haven't had or seen the Daleks for the 60th anniversary or the Christmas special or for this series. So it makes me wonder, did it exist and it's no longer needed, or is it just sort of never existed at all? I feel like that's something interesting to explore with us fans, because I feel like we've always thought that the Terry Nation contract exists, but is this sort of proof that it actually doesn't? On the first watch, I feel the pacing was off, and with the second watch, I do still stand by that. I felt like there was a lot of time spent in the memory TARDIS, although it was sort of written and performed well. I felt like there was just a bit too much time in the memory TARDIS discovering that the universe is dying, because we sort of realised that early on, and they're still sort of going on about that. So I felt like that was slightly wasted time. And that scene on that planet with that woman, it was sad and it was sort of good because in a way it teaches us that being tired is a sign of sort of death and succumbing to Sutekh, which come in useful with Mel. But really, on a second watch, it just sort of drags when you know what's sort of happening with that. So I feel like it was slightly wasted time, and it's probably my least favourite part of the episode because it just went on a bit too much. Although the sort of spoon thing, for me, was a callback to the 13th Doctor, which I did enjoy. I also feel with that scene and the universe dying, it felt sort of fluxy. Did anyone else feel like that? Because I just feel like it was just very much fluxy the way it sort of had the universe dying and the sort of sand or flux taking over everything, and then people on these planets just sort of trying to survive. Again, it just felt very like the flux. So I feel like for me, it was very fluxy. Did anyone else pick up on that? Let me know in the comments below. Mel did really well in this episode. I feel like this is the first time that I've sort of liked her reappearance because it just felt like she wasn't just there and it sort of made sense. And I liked her sort of hijacking from Sutekh and the way she was possessed and the way you could tell when the Doctor held her hand originally that he knew that she was sort of working for Sutekh or something was going wrong. So I did really like that. Whilst the scenes themselves were quite exciting when Sutekh was captured and they were sort of dragging him through the vortex, they were cool. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if he's travelled through the vortex all this time, how comes this time it can destroy him? Also, with this intelligent rope, if it can survive the vortex, then how comes just closing the TARDIS doors on it is enough to break it? Again, it doesn't make sense, and I'm not sure, it's a small nitpick with this, but I'm not sure how I feel about the bottom of the TARDIS in this either, because it does look slightly odd. So these are just sort of things that I didn't really like, and I feel like a lot of people didn't enjoy this sort of ending to Sutekh. And really, if you do think about it, Sutekh didn't play a huge part of this episode. He wasn't in it that much. I feel like the Lynx's construction and destruction was quite cool, and I do like how they done that. But what I don't like is how everyone made it out alive, including people like Colonel Shakozy and sort of Susan Triad's aide. I feel like they could have been left dead. And this is where people sort of start to question the episode and Russell T Davies himself. He said not everyone's going to make it out alive, but to memory, except Sutekh, everyone did make it out alive. So I feel like it just leaves so many questions. So there was that. And something I did enjoy though, flipping that round, I did like how sort of Kate held Colonel Abraham's hand. Is that going to be a future love interest for Kate? I would love to see that and see more of Kate, because I feel like we don't know too much about her personally, so I'd love to see a bit more of that. Originally, I was disappointed that Ruby's mum was ordinary, although it did sort of make up for it when they sort of reconnected, because I did enjoy those scenes. But I feel like it's just such a letdown for us fans, and it just makes us wonder, well, why should we bother investing into other people like Mrs. Flood and the mystery around her, when mystery like Ruby's mum was just something ordinary? And it also makes me wonder, I know the Doctor sort of explained it that they made her a mystery and that's why Sutekh cared, but really, if Sutekh's the god of death, why did he care? He should have just killed everyone and that's that, and then he would have had what he wanted. So for me, it doesn't make sense. And also, Ruby's mum pointing at the lamppost of Ruby Road when nobody's around doesn't make sense as well. Again, we sort of theorise about it, get excited, and then it's just her pointing to the sign of the road. It just, again, it doesn't make sense. I don't like those sort of additions to it. It also, as well, just leaves us with so many questions, like why did it snow? I don't understand why it snowed. And all of it, just there's just so many questions, like all the time I'm coming up with more. There's just so many things left unanswered, and I feel like it was a letdown. Going over the characters now, I have really enjoyed the Doctor's performance through this series, but now we've had one full series, there is something I've picked up on. Now, don't get me wrong, again, I do enjoy the 15th Doctor. He's far less out there than I thought he would be, which is really good for me personally, because that was something I was worried about, and I have enjoyed him a lot more than I thought I would. But I have noticed, now we've had one full series, he's quite an emotional Doctor. There just seems to be a lot of sort of outbursts of anger and crying. Now, certain scenes and in certain episodes makes absolute sense, like in Dot and Bubble. That is completely justified. So I'm not faulting that. I just thought how there's just so much of it. I feel like in every single episode, except 73 Yards, of course, he's had that. And I just feel like it's a bit too much at times. So I feel like they need to sort of wind that down with the writing, because it's more a problem with the writing than Ncuti himself. So I just feel like they should just remove some things, because he's coming across a bit too emotional, and I'm not enjoying that. But apart from that, I have enjoyed his character. As always, I really love Ruby's character, and for me, she's been the best thing about this new era, which is why I'm so disappointed and upset and was left with such a bad taste in my mouth at the end of the episode when she's basically gone. Yes, she's going to be in the next series, but it doesn't look like she's going to be in the Christmas special, and it doesn't look like she's really going to be the main companion. Now we've got another one in. I just feel like we've been pushed into believing she's leaving, then she's staying with another companion. Now she's going to sort of be here and there with the other companion, which I feel like the other companion is going to be there full time, and Ruby's just going to be there here and there, which I'm really disappointed about, because I just really have enjoyed her character, and I feel like we haven't seen enough of her. There's only 8 episodes in a series, and certain episodes like Dot and Bubble, you didn't see a lot of her, so I feel like it's just so disappointing. Also, we're being told that they've got such sort of great friendship between the Doctor and Ruby, yet I feel like we've barely seen it at times. Like in Rogue, they were split up. Dot and Bubble, you didn't see much of them. 73 Hours, you saw a lot of Ruby, which was great, but you didn't see the sort of connection between the Doctor and Ruby. So I feel like we've really missed out on that, and I'm just so disappointed that Ruby's gone. It was such an upsetting scene. One, because it's upsetting, and two, because she sort of left, and I don't like how they've sort of given her a break, and I'm not going to enjoy the Christmas special as much because Ruby's not going to be in it. So again, this is my least favourite part of the episode, and it really does drag it down. It's already quite low, but it drags it down even more. I'm just so gutted that Ruby's gone, because again, I absolutely love her character, and I just really want to get to know her more. I know we will, but I just wanted her as a full-time companion, so again, I'm really disappointed in that. Of course, I enjoyed Sutekh's character, and I do love Sutekh as a villain, but I felt like he was defeated far too easily in this episode. Also, for me, things he did doesn't make sense, like he hung onto the TARDIS and learned every heartbeat of the TARDIS, yet he did nothing with it, so what was the point of that? That doesn't make sense to me. And again, of course, as everyone has pointed out, him hanging onto the TARDIS since the Pyramid of Mars throws up hundreds of problems. For example, in the Giggle when the TARDIS is split, are there 2 Sutekhs? What happened to Sutekh in 73 Yards? And going far back to the classic era, you could just bring up 100 problems with it. So for me, again, that doesn't make sense. Again, for me, it feels like Russell T Davies has rewritten another iconic character, classing this one as a cultural appropriation, where I feel like it's not, because in the Pyramids of Mars, it's justified and explained why Sutekh looks how he is, and I feel like it wasn't needed to rewrite him. Now, whilst I did like Sutekh's appearance in Empire of Death and The Legend of Ruby Sunday, I do like his classic look. So I don't mind it as much as like when he did it with Davros, but again, it just feels a bit unnecessary. Speaking of Susan Trad, when she first mentioned her mum and dad, it really did remind me of the sort of cover story given to the 10th Doctor under the Chameleon Arch. So I thought that could be something, but it didn't turn out to be that. And now it leaves me with a lot of questions with Susan Triad. If she was a real person, then why did Sutekh pick of all people her? And if she wasn't a real person and he made her, then how comes he gave her proper parents and a proper story and a proper life, if their purpose was just to bring the gift of death? So to me, those things don't make sense, and again, there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered. Also, Rose Noble, it was nice to see her again, but I feel like her inclusion in these episodes was pointless. She didn't do much. She hugged the Doctor, which was nice to see. She said that Harriet Arbinger was possessed, and then she sort of helped her use the lasers to shoot Sutekh, but that was about it. What was the point of her coming back? It doesn't make sense. And don't get me wrong, I feel like we've seen enough of the 14th Doctor, so I wouldn't want him back. But would he really just sit around and let Sutekh take over the world, even though he's sort of retired? He wouldn't just sit back and let it happen. So again, these are more things that Russell T Davies has done, which for me don't make sense. So again, that whole sort of thing doesn't make sense. It leaves me with a lot of questions. Speaking of Russell T Davies himself, there are some things that I have questions on what he said as well. One of them I've touched upon, but another is the 5 episodes he told us we should watch. Now, except The Church on Ruby Road, what was the point of the other 5? Because I don't really see what it is. It might have just been a sort of distraction, diversion, so we don't find out the truth, but really, it just doesn't make sense. It feels like a bit like a waste of time. So, again, more questions. I just don't understand why it was done. Now, with an episode like this, you've really got to come up with good ideas, and I've only just come up with rough ideas, but I feel like this could have made it a lot better. Now, you could have kept Ruby's mum as ordinary, that's fine, but really, if you included someone like the Trickster, which a lot of people theorise will be back, including myself, then it could have made this episode a lot better. Now, you could have had Ruby's mum ordinary, like I said, but instead, the one placing Ruby on the Church of Ruby Road was the Trickster for his own motives. We know the Doctor's weak point is his compassion and his companions, and the Trickster could have been exploiting this for his own evil plan, not knowing about Sutekh and Sutekh not knowing about him. That way then there would have sort of been answers and sort of help give fans the sort of what they wanted with the mystery, because I feel like it is still a letdown. That way, if we had the Trickster return, it would have been more exciting, and it would have also given us a surprise in the Empire of Death, because there wasn't too many surprises in that episode really, or any at all, to be honest. So I feel like having the Trickster in that could have made that better. And then again, it would have been quite cool, because then you, instead of Sutekh being destroyed by being exposed to the vortex, which doesn't make sense, you could have had the Trickster and Sutekh battle each other and then fight to the death and destroy both of them. That way it would have been sort of a nice ending to both of them, because the Trickster is sort of like wants chaos by chance, and Sutekh would have put an end to that and wouldn't have let that happen. It could have killed off the Trickster. So the Trickster tries to destroy him, Sutekh tries to destroy the Trickster, and then both of them sort of battle to the death. So again, I feel like that could have been a much better inclusion, and it could have given us a surprise in the Empire of Death. A rough idea, but I just feel like that could have made the episode so much better. As sad as it is to say, a second time round it's more enjoyable, but that's because your expectations have been lowered, which is a sad thing to say really, because it is a disappointment in places. Now, this episode could have been ranked slightly higher than I would have if they didn't get rid of Ruby, because although it doesn't play a big part in the story itself, I am just so disappointed they've got rid of Ruby. Yeah, she's coming back, but she's not going to be the main companion, which I'm so disappointed about. So with it being a disappointment in places, with Ruby's mum being sort of a letdown, and with Ruby leaving, I'm going to have to give it a sort of 5 out of 10, because I'm just so disappointed that Ruby's gone. And a lot of the episode was a bit of a letdown, to be honest. So yeah, it's quite disappointing, because The Legend of Ruby Sunday was so good, and then The Empire of Death was a fair letdown, to be honest. So it is quite disappointing in that. Now, looking at the polls I put out there for The Legend of Ruby Sunday, unsurprisingly, about 95% of people really enjoyed it. They either liked it, with about 70% loving it, which wasn't surprising to see. I was more surprised at the poll for The Empire of Death. I feel like maybe with a rewatch people have changed their minds, but I'm quite surprised that only 30% either hated it or disliked it. Don't get me wrong, I'm really pleased that the majority have actually enjoyed it, but I really was expecting more, because I feel like a lot of people have sort of said about how they didn't enjoy it. But I am glad that people have enjoyed it. But what are your in-depth thoughts on the episodes? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully see you in my next video soon, where I do a tour of my TARDIS on how I made it and how you can make your own on the 2nd of July, which will be my birthday. So again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully see you in my next video soon. Thank you all for watching, and take care.